average human lifespan is absurdly, terrifyingly, insultingly short. Here's one way to put it into perspective. The first modern humans appeared on the plains of Africa at least 200,000 years ago, and scientists estimate that life in some form will persist for another 1.5 billion years or more, until the intensifying heat of the sun condemns the last organism to death. But you, assuming you live to be 80, you'll have had about 4,000 weeks. Expressing the matter in such startling terms makes it easy to see why philosophers from ancient Greece to the present day have taken the brevity of life to be the defining problem of human existence. We've been granted the mental capabilities to make almost infinitely ambitious plans, yet practically no time at all to put them into action. In one sense, of course, nobody these days needs telling that there's not enough time. We're obsessed with our overfilled inboxes and lengthening to-do lists, haunted by the guilty feeling that we ought to be getting more done or different things done or both. Surveys reliably show that we feel more pressed for time than ever before. As the gig economy has grown, busyness slowly became rebranded as hustle. Relentless work, not as a burden to be endured, but as an exhilarating life choice worth boasting about on social media. In reality, though, it's the same old problem pushed to the extreme. The pressure to fit ever-increasing quantities of activity into a stubbornly non-increasing quantity of daily time. Consider all the technology intended to help us gain the upper hand over time. By any sane logic, time ought to feel more expansive and abundant, thanks to all the hours freed up. But this is nobody's actual experience. Instead, life accelerates, and everyone grows more impatient. It turns out that when people do enough to match their needs, they just find new things to need and new lifestyles to aspire to. They never quite manage to keep up with the Joneses because whenever they're in danger of getting close, they nominate new and better Joneses with whom to try and keep up. As a result, they work harder and harder, and soon busyness becomes an emblem of prestige. But now, here we get to the heart of things, to a feeling that goes deeper and that's harder to put into words. The sense that despite all this activity, even the relatively privileged among us rarely get around to doing the right things. Our days are spent trying to get through tasks in order to get them out of the way, with the result that we may live mentally in the future, waiting for when we'll finally get round to do what really matters, and worrying in the meantime that we don't measure up, that we might lack the drive or stamina to keep pace with the speed at which life now seems to move. It doesn't result in peace of mind. Productivity is a trap. Nobody in the history of humanity has ever achieved work-life balance, whatever that might be, and you certainly won't get there by copying the masters. The day will never arrive when you finally have everything under control, when you're fully optimized and finally can turn, at long last, to the things life is really supposed to be about. Let's start by admitting defeat. None of this is ever going to happen. But you know what? That's excellent news. Our troubled relationship with time arises largely from a subconscious effort to avoid the painful constraints of reality. After all, it's painful to confront how limited your time is, because it means tough choices are inevitable, and that you won't have time for all you once dreamed you might do. And so, rather than ace our limitations, we engage in avoidance strategies. In an effort to carry on feeling limitless, we push ourselves harder, chasing fantasies of the perfect work-life balance. Or we procrastinate, which is another means of maintaining the feeling of omnipotent control over life. Because you needn't risk the upsetting experience of failing at an intimidating project. Obviously, if you never even start it. But what if we try to embrace our limits? A limit-embracing attitude, in practical terms, means organizing your days with the understanding that you definitely won't have time for everything you want to do, or that other people want you to do. And so, at the very least, you could stop beating yourself up for failing. Since hard choices are unavoidable, what matters is learning to make them consciously, deciding what to focus on and what to neglect, rather than letting them get made by default, or deceiving yourself that with enough hard work and the right tricks, you might be able to do them all. It means standing firm in the face of FOMO, the fear of missing out, because you come to realize that missing out on something, indeed, on almost everything, is basically guaranteed, which isn't a problem anyway, as it turns out, because missing out is what makes our choices meaningful in the first place. Every decision to use a portion of time on anything represents the sacrifice of all other ways in which you could have spent that time, but didn't. And to willingly make that sacrifice is to take a stand without reservation on what matters most to you. This confrontation with limitation leads to the insight that meaningful productivity often comes not from hurrying things up, but from letting them take the time they take, surrendering to what in German has been called Eigenzeit, or time inherent to a process itself. Instead of thinking of time as something you use, there is an alternative. The unfashionable but powerful notion of letting time use you. Approaching your life not as an opportunity to implement your predetermined plans for success, but as a matter of responding to the needs of your places and your moment in history. I know that time pressure comes largely from forces outside ourselves, from a cutthroat economy, from the loss of social safety nets and family networks that used to help ease the burden of work and childcare, and the expectation that everyone should excel in their careers, and everything else that exists on the scale. None of that can be solved by self-help alone, or vacation, or an adult coloring book, or the Pomodoro technique, or overnight bucking oats. But my point here is that however privileged or unfortunate your specific situation, belief-basing the reality of it can only help. This notion that fulfillment might lie in embracing rather than denying our temporal limitations wouldn't have surprised the philosophers of ancient Greece and Rome. They understood limitless to be the sole preserve of the gods. The noblest of human goals wasn't to become godlike, but to be wholeheartedly human instead. Back in the 1950s, a splendidly cranky British author named Charles Scarfield Lott Ducan wrote a short book, Teach Yourself to Live, in which he recommended the limit-embracing life. And he responded saltily to a suggestion that his advice was depressing. Depressing? Not a bit of it. No more depressing than a cold shower is depressing. You are no longer befogged and bewildered by a false and misleading illusion of your life, like most people. This is an excellent spirit in which to confront the challenge of using time well. None of us can single-handedly overthrow a society dedicated to limitless productivity, distraction, and speed. But right here, right now, you can stop buying into the delusion that any of that is ever going to bring satisfaction. You can face the facts. You can turn on the shower. Brace yourself for some invigoratingly icy water, and step in.